Hi, I'm Paul Feiner. I'm the Greenburgh Town Supervisor, and school is ending. There's a lot of college graduates and law school graduates and medical school graduates, and some people are going to be looking for jobs. And today our program is what you could do if you're searching for a job. So my guest is an expert, Jody Queen-Hubert, who is a career services counselor at Pace University. And maybe you could give us some tips. Is it, if somebody's out of school and it's already the summer and they don't have a job, should they go on vacation and figure that nobody hires in the summer, or should they? What should they be doing now?
Well, they should have been starting a long time ago. So starting now is kind of a little bit late, but never too late to get into the game. But just to kind of go back a little bit, to give you my background, I've spent 40 years in higher education as Director of Career Services at 2 universities. Pace University for 26 years, where I started as a career advisor and then ended as the Executive Director for the university. And then I retired there and went to St. John's University, where I ran for 12 years a specialized career development program. So college students, so my area of expertise is college students, and that's what we can talk about today in general, but searching for a job is a job in itself, as everyone says. And no, students shouldn't be taking the summer off. Finding a career and finding a job is an integral part of a college experience if you're going to college, and hopefully those students who are graduating have done the preliminary homework to start launching their career. Obviously, utilizing the services of the university, the Career Services Center. Nowadays, universities are paying much more attention to assisting students in transitioning to the workplace because parents are demanding it. The cost of education has grown exponentially, and parents want a return on their investment. So there are many colleges that have amped up the services from departments such as I ran, and universities are very interested in the success of their students and helping students.
So what are some of the programs that a college career center offers?
Well, first of all, a lot of colleges offer career development courses, a freshman course or offered at some point during their career, which can go over and introduce them to the concepts of career development, choosing a career. We just talked about your daughter who thought she had an interest in one occupation and tested the waters and said, well, maybe that's not where I want to be, and is kind of redirecting. That's a good thing. We want students to try and identify those possible career paths as soon as possible. So there are many schools that offer a credit-bearing career development course. In addition to that, a lot of the classes that, the faculty are being asked to bring into their coursework relevancy to the employment landscape, and to start developing skills for students to become more work ready. Because we know that it has to be developed early. The landscape is extremely competitive. There are many, many college graduates, and even though you read about current employment trends being somewhat tight, there may not be opportunities for students where they want them to be. So they're going to have to do their homework. And now, when coming to a career center and working with a career counselor, which I remember doing, I think, my last week in college, which wasn't too productive, but by going to the career center early on and working with a counselor, students can begin to narrow down occupations that are aligned with their values, skills, and interests.
And is it important to take advantage of internship programs?
Absolutely. So, in our world, I think we know that experience is what gets people ahead of the game. And I recommend to parents and students that they start working early on. High school jobs are very important, and any kind of employment during college doesn't have to be related to your major. Internships are obviously fabulous and an entree to many full-time jobs where employers will hire those students. So if you are successful in getting an internship that relates to your major, you are golden. If you have more than one, you're great, because obviously when employers come to campus, which is another opportunity for students to interview with employers who come physically to campus, or now, of course, virtually through various platforms, employers are connecting with college students, and their first introduction is a resume. So if a student has no work experience, their resume is going to the bottom of the pile. They're not going to be able to demonstrate skills that they've developed in the workplace. So it's not just learning skills in the classroom, technical skills that relate to their major, it's developing soft skills as well. And colleges are now also trying to focus on those soft skills, which are those job readiness skills, such as communication. At my universities that I worked with, the management classes had required presentations to get students more comfortable with presenting and speaking in public, because we know that the skill sets that employers are looking for, number one is communication skills.
What if somebody never had an internship and they don't really have much job experience, they graduated college? What advice would you give that type of person?
Well, they're going to have to get a job somewhere, and they're going to have to start. And I always say, the first job out of college is just your first job. It's not going to be your, career, but it's to launch you, get into the workplace. You've got to build work skills. You have to learn how to work with a team. You have to be responsible. You have to develop a work ethic and integrity and show up. And through working, that's an education in itself. And that's why I encourage students to start working in high school, if possible, to begin to develop an understanding of just the workplace.
If somebody is, say, average, not the smartest, not the dumbest, do you recommend, but they're really eager for a job, do you recommend that they, when they speak to potential employers, say, I'll volunteer for a couple of weeks just so you could get a sense to know something about myself? Is that
Yeah, I mean, no employer, most employers can't take you on as a volunteer unless you're in a volunteer program. But yes, they should try and volunteer, but for-profit companies won't take a volunteer. But a student who is average, you know what? Most of us are average. We're in that spectrum where we're not on the edges. So most of us are average. But what what a student needs to do is go out there and just start working if the student has not been able to work.
And what are some of the mistakes that students or recent graduates make when they're applying for jobs?
Okay, well, I mean, the whole job application process is also something that students need guidance on, and that career counselors, career centers can help students. I always used to say, you know, college students graduate, they walk across the podium and they get their fake certificate at graduation, and I always wanted to stand there and give them a professional resume, because they should graduate with their diploma and a great resume. They have to be able to present themselves to employers. College students need to reflect on what they've learned in college. If I was interviewing them, and I always say this to students when advising them about interviewing, you know, so what did you learn in school? Tell me what, you know, what was this degree about? What was your major about? What are the key takeaways? Students need to be able to understand what they've learned in college, and they need to put it on a resume. They need to put their work experience on a resume and present themselves in the professional way that is now regarded. You know, an employer gives 5 seconds to a resume, and the students need to make sure that they've sat with a counselor who's looked at their resume and make sure that it's professional. They also need to know how to go out and approach the job market in terms of where the jobs are, research careers, research what are the emerging jobs, what are the jobs in your area, here in Greenburgh, in the New York City area. Where are the most jobs? Where is it most likely that you could get employed? And
when somebody goes to a job interview, how could they prepare for that interview? Do you research the company? Do you try doing Google searches on the person who is interviewing you? You know, so if you have common interests, you know, if you like sports, you know, you could mention that. You know, are there like tricks to making a good impression?
Of course. I mean, interviewing is an art. It's a skill. It's something that you get good at. You can practice and you can get good at. And there are absolutely guidelines to how to prepare for an interview and to how to present yourself the most professionally. And many of the things that you said, of course, you have to do your homework. It's a test. We know the basic questions of a job interview. Tell me about yourself. You know, tell me about those jobs on your resume, etc. So we can prepare for a job interview, and students need to do that. They absolutely must look at the company, that's for sure. They also need to really analyze the job description, and I'm really old-fashioned with this. I sit with the students and I say, "Did you print out that job description?" "No, you know, I have it on my phone." I said, "Print out that job description and let's take out the yellow highlighter. Let's look for keywords on that job description. If the employer is using the word communication 5 times in that job description, well, guess what? They're telling you that's a really important skill set that they're looking for. So your job is to demonstrate to them how you've developed your communication skills, how you've used them in your coursework, how you've used them in a volunteer job or a job at CVS or whatever. If customer relations is a big word that's being used, identify those skills and bring them up. Don't wait to be asked for those kinds of skill sets. So you need to really, really look at that job description. You need to have some really good questions. And you said a word a few minutes ago about average students, but really enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is often what gets an entry-level candidate a job, because there might be, or an internship, there might be 5 candidates that have the same bachelor degree in English or whatever. But that student who shows enthusiasm, curiosity, which is one of my other favorite words, is to really show the employer that you're curious about their organization, their business, how they make their money, what the greatest challenges are. So getting into a conversation with the interviewer about their business shows the employer that you have a really strong interest, and you're a person who asks questions,
right,
and
so
a problem solver.
Right, so sometimes when you have an interview, you think that the person interviewing you is interested in you, and you have to show that you're interested in them, because they're going to hire you because you're going to add value to them, not because they want to give you a chance at having a job.
Right.
I'll just give you an example for myself. When I was out of law school, I had interviews. I was trying to get a job as a lawyer, and I'd go to interviews, and they said, "Oh, tell me about yourself." I said, "Oh, I want to run for office." And I never got the job because they were not that interested in hiring somebody who would work for a law firm, basically because they wanted to run for office.
For your end game, for your end result.
Right. So I probably would have been, had a career in law if I had said, I really love law, I really love the practice, I love the research. If I was more optimistic rather than saying, I really don't like this field, but I'm doing it because it looks good if I want to run for office.
Well, you have to understand, and I tell this to students, they have a job to fill. They don't care what your personal goals really are. They've got work piling up on a desk, and they want somebody who's going to come right in and want to do that work, not be sitting there thinking about where they're going next. But I always told students, don't talk about grad school. No, they don't. The employers don't really, want to hear that you're already thinking about your next career move. You have to convince the person that the job in front of them, and that job description that you've memorized and analyzed, is the job you want.
So you shouldn't say, "Oh, I want to get this so I can have experience, so I can move on to the next job."
Of course not. Of course not.
Right.
Why would they want to hire you? They have a need, and they've got to fill that need. So they want a student. Your job is to convince them that you're going to come in and, as you said, add value right away. And you have to, and if they ask you a question, which I don't like, which is where do you see yourself in 5 years? I say, you just revert right back to that job and that organization. And you say, well, in 5 years, I hope to have been successful in this role that we're talking about today, and that I've been able to grow within your organization.
That is excellent. Another question that I have is, a lot of people are like career students. So they go from college for a master's degree, a doctorate degree, is that sort of a mistake? Are they better off after graduating college, getting a job, sticking with a job for a year or two, maybe going to night school, taking a little bit more time, or are they better off immediately going to graduate school?
When students say to me, I'm going to go to grad school, or do you think I should go to grad school? And I say, what is your goal? Why, do you know exactly what you want to do? Because why would you spend money, again, very expensive move, unless you really know that that's what you want to do? And my feeling is that a 22-year-old, most 22-year-olds may not be able to make that commitment. And I suggest going out and working. Because again, being out in the workplace, you're going to be exposed to things you never were exposed to before. Not just all kinds of careers, but how organizations work, and where you might see yourself. So I generally don't recommend, unless a student, and there are some students, and we know You knew you wanted to run for office a long time. There are some young people who say, "Oh, I want to be an accountant. My uncle's an accountant, my father's an accountant, and I'm a young lady and I want to be an accountant. I always wanted to." Most young people cannot make that kind of career decision so early on. And I think that somebody who has tried multiple degrees has not done their homework on analyzing and identifying career paths that are realistic for them and fit their values, skills, interest, and personality. And that's what a successful career is, an occupation that you can find fulfilling and meaningful has to fit into your values, what's important to you, your skill sets, and of course your interests and your personality. Are you outgoing? And there's so much research. There are inventories. There are career interest inventories. There are personality inventories. There are skills inventories. But you've got to be able to identify those things to narrow down these careers.
That is so interesting. If somebody has a job interview, and let's say you've had a couple jobs and you didn't like the person you were working with, and you have an interview and they say, "Oh, I worked for this company before," and they say, "Oh, what was your impression?" You say, "Oh, that my employer was the worst." I mean, are you better off just being upbeat and positive?
Yeah, you never ever say anything negative, or why did you leave? If you had a difficult supervisor or saw some things, but you should never say negatives on an interview. If somebody says, "What do you think of that company?" you can say, "I think they have a lot of challenges." You have to choose your vocabulary. Language and communication in the interview is very important. So practicing, and I recommend that students write down the answers. It's like an essay. An interview question is like an essay. You have an opening statement, you have your supporting sentences, and then you kind of wrap it up.
So you have to talk about the value you bring to the organization, the fact that you're a hard worker, you're reliable, and I guess most companies would want somebody loyal.
Sure.
Yes, if somebody has like an independent personality and they tend to question, is that something that they should say, or
no? I'm not if you want to get hired.
Right.
I don't like to say lie or fib, but I think that you have to mold the answer in a way that makes you come across as a team player.
The team player.
They don't want employers don't want anyone who is going to cause a problem. They don't want to hire someone. That's why if you're saying a resume shows a lot of gaps in employment or a lot of jumping around. Now, as a young person out of college, the first 10 years, perfectly normal to be in a job 2 years. I try to say to students, stay in a job 2 years. It looks better than a year, but most kids are moving through jobs at the beginning because they're exploring, and that's okay. And that's, you can say that in an interview. I was there. I learned some great skills. What I say to students is say, what I learned from that job was.
That's good.
And you highlight what you learned there. You don't highlight what you didn't like about the job. You say, this job exposed me to X. It allowed me to develop, Y, and I am taking those skills and I am looking to apply them in my next role where I'd like to expand these other skills.
And how important is networking, and how do you take advantage of networking?
Well, networking, obviously, the who you know is what we were talking about earlier, and college career centers absolutely can help with alumni networks. There's mentorship programs that career centers are running. Informational interviews, to me, are the most beneficial because you're not asking the person for a long-term relationship, but you're trying to find people who are in jobs that you'd like to find out more about. So if you think you might want to be in community government, city, county government, a student would call, and I'm sure you have lots of people who say, could I come talk to you and ask you some questions about what you do? Then you could say at the end of that conversation, is there anybody that you could recommend would be good for me to speak to? So if you recommend one more person for that networker to go to, then they're building their network. LinkedIn is amazing. It's an amazing tool. You can connect with tons of people. You can ask to be connected with other connections that a person may have. And most people like to talk about themselves. They like to talk about their careers. And that information is extremely beneficial. I've had some students who choose a major and they never spoke to a student, they never spoke to a professional in that field.
And how important is a cover letter?
Well, nowadays, so many job applications are through applicant tracking systems on computerized software. Certainly for big companies and probably even for government. So a lot of cover letters aren't necessarily being read, but I always recommend doing a cover letter, including a cover letter, so that you can show an employer you know how to write.
And what about a thank you letter?
Oh, well, thank you is my number one advice to students. You thank a person the minute you start talking to them. At the end, you absolutely write a follow-up letter, email. And all of this now is through the internet.
So it should be done immediately.
Within 24 hours. And again, you're saying to you're showing that person you listened to the conversation. So don't send a letter that comes from a template you saw on the internet. You write 3 sentences that says, "Dear Paul, I really enjoyed our discussion today about what you've been doing for the past 25 years. Oh, they remembered how many years I've been working. And I was particularly impressed by the comment you made about listening to your constituents. That resonated with me. Thank you so much for your time." So you've got to show
that you paid attention. I really enjoyed the fact that you like fishing just like I do.
And you learned something, you remembered it. And you're not just a robot, sending out, 25 letters that don't mean anything. And you don't have to be a genius to do that.
This is so interesting. I'm just upset that this is only a half-hour interview, but I learned a lot from this. And if I had spoken to you after law school, I probably would have been a judge by now. But again, thanks so much, and really enjoyed it, and I'm sure other people will benefit from this interview.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. My guest is Jody Queen-Hubert, and she gave us great advice on how to get a job.